Our founding fathers got it wrong. The miracle of our country isn't that we were all created equal. It's that we recognize those who aren't equal and we make them so. We do that through civil rights movements. There is one today that is in its infancy. They are literally crying out for help. They are hungry to pursue their liberty and their ability to achieve. The next civil rights movement is providing low-income children with access to high-quality early education. This is an important point in our history. We know that nearly half the children born today are born into poverty. To borrow from Langston Hughes, they are born into a dream deferred. We know from science that the ability to achieve is not inborn, it's made. The early experiences for developing emotional and social skills are learned through early interactions with caregivers from ages birth through 5. These early experiences literally build the structure of the brain. Children who receive these experiences do better. Those who don't tend to struggle. These struggles can hardly be remediated later on. We know from research that the achievement gap starts long before children get to school and is difficult, if not impossible, to close once they get there. Children from affluent families get the early education they need from their parents at home, or they can afford to buy high-quality early childhood education while they're at work. Those children win the lottery. Children from low-income families are consigned to be unequal. Their parents could work 2 or 3 jobs and they still couldn't afford to send them to the high-quality early childhood program they would need to succeed. Now, if you don't believe me, let me share a fact with you. By the age of 3, a child from a high-income family will have a vocabulary of 1,100 words. A child from a low-income family will have a vocabulary of just 500 words. Starting from behind means you stay behind. It's being born into the bondage of class and living with all of the limits of being born unequal. The solution is to create a level playing field for children so that they can compete and they can succeed. I know something about this and the importance of extending our idea of civil rights to children and early education because I was a part of a civil rights fight. I was a plaintiff in Hollingsworth versus Perry, a landmark Supreme Court case that provided me and many others the right to marry a same-sex partner. I am also the executive director of the First 5 Years Fund, an advocacy organization charged with gaining greater government investments in high-quality early childhood education for low-income children. The reason for this is that we understand from science that children's brains are literally growing every second through early interactions with caregivers and trained professionals. Their ability to learn is directly related to the care they receive. Extending our idea of civil rights to the right of every child to get the early education they need is critically important in creating equality. I, too, experienced being born unequal. When that became evident to me and to society, fundamental freedoms were immediately closed off. Openly falling in love, getting married, having children, having the same rights as any spouse or parent was not available to me. Society thought that that should be okay. But I knew that in order to have my aspirations met, I had to have the same rights as other people. Like thousands of children born today, I was born unequal. Having my civil rights has immeasurably improved the quality of my life. Providing high-quality early childhood education to low-income children would provide them with an infinite number of opportunities. It would improve all of our lives. I know this because there is research that shows that when we do this, children are more likely to graduate from school. They are more likely to engage in healthy behaviors. They're more likely to have full-time employment, and they're also most likely to contribute to society. Nobel economist James Heckman has found that for every dollar we spend on early childhood education, we experience a 13% return on that investment. Funding that we can use for other purposes, funding that's brought back to us by the contributions made by the children we invested in. Now, you don't have to take this on face value. This isn't just true in theory, it's also true in real life. I want to tell you about a little girl in Denver, Colorado. Jo is the daughter of a single working mother. No matter how hard Jo's mom works, she could never afford to send Jo to a high-quality early learning program. But fortunately, in Colorado, they provide some funding, and that gets mixed with federal funding, which allows Jo to attend Clayton Early Learning. Every day at Clayton is a learning and growing adventure for Jo. In the morning, she can't wait to get up and go to school. At night, when her mom comes to pick her up, she rarely wants to go home. She is benefiting from the structured, intentional curriculum of Clayton Early Learning. Jo is incredibly lucky. The sky is the limit for Jo, thanks to early childhood education. But Jo is 1 in 5 of the low-income children who get transformative early education. Unfortunately, 90% of children who are eligible for federal programs do not receive it for lack of funding. This is tragic. This isn't right. We should not be a part of this injustice. This is the next civil rights movement. Now, I know why you're here, but do you know how you got here? All right, raise your hand if you had a parent or a relative or a caregiver stay home with you in your earliest years. Keep your hand up if they took you shopping or to the library or the zoo or the park and talked to you constantly. All right, okay. Now, put your hand up if your parents could afford to send you to preschool or daycare while they were working. All right, now, raise your hand if somebody saw potential in you when you were very young and proactively helped you to develop it. All right, now look around the room. Keep your hands up. Now you know how you got here. If you didn't see somebody's hand up near you, know that they survived formidable odds just to be here today. Now, you don't have to march in the streets. You don't have to take this to the Supreme Court. But you do have to lend a helping hand to children like Jo, thousands of children like Jo. You need to take them with you to the voting booth. You need to talk about them to candidates that are running for office. You need to insist that we do everything we can to help them reach their full potential. Transformative early childhood education is the great equalizer. It will break the bonds of class. Everyone succeeds when everyone is included. Thank you.